Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we are going to talk all about the second episode in the Witcher show by Netflix called 4 Marks. I'm going to go over the entire thing and tell you what I think about pretty much everything. Now, this episode is somewhat chaotic, no pun intended, because based on its beginning, it's one of my least favorite episodes, but based on its ending, it is probably my absolute favorite. So, spoilers ahead, and let's get going. First off, we have this young couple here making out and discussing flowers.
A daisy, not a rose.
Roses are cliché.
Daisies are cheap.
And then suddenly, pre-transformation Yennefer appears. And now that I mentioned Yennefer for the first time in these reviews, let's talk a bit about her. She has got to be the most changed character in the show so far. And I'm not talking about appearances here. I'm referring specifically to how many new scenes she has that are not in the books, and also some removed ones that used to be there. Important ones too. On top of it all, her story is presented in what in my opinion is a far less subtle way. Actually, I quite like some parts, but at the same time, I loved the way her character was presented in the books, and the show tends to be more heavy-handed when it comes to her. But more on that later when we get to the individual scenes, so back to where she shows up. There's something off about this scene. I think it's the way they both suddenly drop all thoughts of romance and immediately jump on the opportunity to bully her. I didn't like it that much. What I did like though was Hunchback Yennefer, and I'm actually surprised because I didn't think I would initially. I think it's the best part of this actress's performance. She's really good at it. The movements, the speech, the behavior, she does it all well, and additionally, since I learned who's going to play Yennefer way back, I've had one major issue with her. And no, it's not that she's half Indian, it's the fact that there's something childish, immature, infantile, I don't know what to call it exactly, in terms of the way the actress looks. It's probably the round eyes, or the roundish facial features, I don't know. But anyway, in these scenes, those features actually play to her advantage.
Oh, you're a virgin.
And so I thought it works surprisingly well. Okay, next up, she teleports and finds herself in Istred's company. Now, his backstory is entirely new stuff as well. Never mentioned in the books. Initially, I thought he would be more one-dimensional, but he isn't. This particular scene is fairly brief though, and again we have what in my opinion is an example of not so good pacing. He says how the fact that Yennefer teleported herself will make her easy to track, and then sends her home. Then we immediately cut to Tissaia arriving at her home already. Also, now that we've mentioned Tissaia, some of you may have missed the fact that the actress is the same woman who voices Anna Henrietta in The Witcher 3. And she sounds great.
2 things. Balance and control.
At times I hunt foxes. Do you know how it works?
You can even hear her say Toussaint at one point. And now we get to what is probably my least favorite scene in this episode. The part where Yennefer's dad sells her to Tissaia for 1/3 of a pig's price.
6.
4.
What are you doing?
Sold. 4 marks.
I wish someone better than me would explain how I feel about this, because I'm finding it difficult. Let's put it this way. The relationship between parents and children is something that holds a great storytelling potential. I mean, just look at The Witcher 3. There are so many great stories in there that revolve precisely around that theme. There are even ones that are specifically about parents mistreating their children, similar to the case of Yennefer. Take for example Gretka's parents, who sent her to follow the Trail of Treats, and later as the story unfolds, we realize what that actually means. You also have the Bloody Baron's unborn baby. You have the daughters of Ornesta from the abandoned chapel, you know, in the Hearts of Stone DLC. Then in Blood and Wine you have the guardians who abandoned the orphans to the vampires. Maybe even the son of Lothar, although that's slightly different. So my point is that there is so much potential to come up with something clever and deep and memorable. Instead, they make her dad appear what in my opinion is almost comically evil. Alright, moving on from this, the follow-up scene is actually pretty good. I really like the performance here. As I said before, I think the actress is much better suited to play this version of Yennefer, and scenes like this prove it. Okay, moving on to Ciri in the woods now. Call me crazy, but why is she doing this? Putting mud on her hair, I mean. Is it because it's so big and bright that she needs to get it all muddy as a sort of a camouflage? I mean, if that's the reason, why not simply put her hood on? She has quite the big hood. Also, it's clearly very cold, so why don't she put her hood on? It actually helps against the cold too.
No, thank you. I don't eat rat.
Anyway, we have some self-reflecting dialogue here and some good acting by Ciri. And then the follow-up scene with the glove switching, pretty good as well. Okay, then we have Dandelion's singing. I loved it. His voice is great, the lyrics are great, definitely one of the best parts in this episode.
Need old Nan the Hag to stir up a potion so that your lady might get an abortion. Abort yourself!
Oh, oi! Fuck off! I'm so...
And now that we've mentioned him, should we talk a little bit more about Dandelion? First off, the name. They call him Jaskier now. This is actually his original name in Polish, and I don't mind it at all, it sounds alright, but I must admit that specifically in English, I do prefer Dandelion. And the reason why is because it's also a bit of a wordplay on the words dandy lion, which as a description I think fits the bard rather well.
You must have some review for me, 3 words or less.
And here is his first meeting with Geralt. The two of them, they are quite the charming duo in the books, and the show captures it, I'd say. What I do regret though is that a good amount of stories where Geralt and Dandelion's relationship is shown in the books are not actually part of the show. So those who haven't read them probably don't realize just how much time they spent together. Okay, we go to Yennefer again, and way back in one of my other videos, I called out a certain line saying that it doesn't make any sense to me.
Chaos is the most dangerous thing in this world. But without control, chaos will kill you.
And it turns out it was actually made up from bits of 3 different lines and just used for the trailer. Anyway, they have a brief explanation of how Tissaia is able to track the mages.
Fringilla froze a cat.
On accident.
Fun fact here, Fringilla is actually the cousin of the character that the actress of Tissaia plays in The Witcher 3. And here's another thing I did not like. They try to explain how magic works. The problem is that later on in the show, we have many inconsistent examples. And I think it would have simply been better to say, magic takes a toll on you or something, and leave it at that. Instead, they show Fringilla here lifting a small rock and her hand basically withers away.
I'm doing it! Your hand!
This is the balance.
Meanwhile, later we have examples of far bigger spells with far smaller impact on the caster, and also spells that do not appear to be that big or complicated, but actually kill the caster. So yeah. Additionally, we learn that young Yennefer was not top of her class, and we get some lines that I think are better left unsaid.
Your worst fear makes such sense. Even if you were a beauty, still no one would love you.
Anyway, back to Ciri and some more world building. We see what people say and do in dire times.
Hey! No cutting!
Don't touch me. This food was provided by the Queen.
May she rot in hell.
We also see examples of hatred for elves and dwarves, and it's all done rather well.
Don't worry, he's one of the clean ones.
Moving back to Geralt and Dandelion, and perhaps I should bring up the timelines issue again. As you can see, in this episode we're hopping between 3 different timelines. Pre-transformation Yennefer, which is the furthest in the past, then at least a few decades later we have Geralt and Dandelion, and finally not that much later we have Ciri. Anyway, we meet Torque.
Did your mother fuck a snowman?
And I find it difficult to immerse myself in the following scene. Torque himself looks a little strange, but the elves in particular should have had a more specific look to them. Here's the thing, I made myself a note not to dwell too much on things that look wrong in this review series, simply because I've already talked too much about it as it is, but the elves in the Witcher show just come across as a bunch of humans with pointy ears, and I think they should look and sound and behave a little differently.
Do you want to die right now?
As opposed to later.
No, please, not the loot!
Everything you touch, you destroy.
Yennefer, meanwhile, is learning to read minds, and we, in turn, learn more stuff about her that once again I think should have either been left out or presented differently.
My father died. His blood is why I'm cursed with a twisted spine. Why I'm only worth 4 marks. Why no one could ever love me.
I love you, Yen.
Then it's time for catching lightning in a bottle. Yennefer tries to kill Sabrina Glevisig, I think, because she succumbs to the dark side or something, which, by the way, I kind of like, especially since they're presenting magic as chaos, so it makes sense.
There are mages like Sabrina who ignore their emotions. And then there are mages like us who are consumed by them.
And then we get an absolutely brutal scene of the dwarven servant taking revenge. It's a little shocking, but it's very thematic, I think, for the world of The Witcher. Certainly a nice addition to the show, and I love Ciri's reaction here. The actress makes a great scared face. And we have yet another interesting addition to the lore, or at least I think it is. I don't recall this in the books, correct me if I'm wrong. The failed students, those who did not ascend, are actually being turned into fuel for Aretusa, so to speak. Tisaya turns them to eels, and they're kept in this magical pool or something. It reminded me a bit of Dragon Age, where they make some mages tranquil and still utilize them, only this alternative seems to be much harsher. I'm actually looking forward to how they're gonna use it in the following seasons. It is brought up once again in this one, but not really to serve any greater purpose yet. And the best I saved for last, which is actually in the end of the episode, and that is Dandelion's new song.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty, oh.
Composed, of course, based on Geralt's recent heroics, and it's just lovely. The lyrics are great, the melody is so catchy, he performs it really well.
At the edge of the world, fight the mighty horn that bashes and breaks you and brings you to more.
They made something of a music video to end the episode with. I think I may have said that in the beginning of the video, but it was, I think, my favorite ending out of all the episodes. But in addition to the song, I want to praise another line here, and it is this.
I do have respect for Philavandrel. They survived the Great Cleansing once, who knows? Maybe he can do it again.
And so cried the witcher, he can't be bleed.
That's not how it happened. Where's your newfound respect?
Respect doesn't make history.
This gives us a bit of a glimpse of something we get more of in the books, and that's the, how shall I call it, deeper side of Dandelion, if you will. I wish there was more of it in the show, but at least there was something. Alright, on that positive note, I shall end the video. Tell me what you thought of everything, leave a like if you've enjoyed it, and I thank you very much for watching. Special thanks to my supporters on Patreon and YouTube members, and until the review of the 3rd episode, stay tuned and be good.